Og Redditors, what are the darkest Reddit moment threads that no longer exist or got lost over time? For me, it's the pregnant lady who posted about a DPS worker claiming to have received an anonymous tip about drug use in the house, and how the newborn may need to be removed from the parent's custody after birth. And the lady was asking for advice as there was no drug use going on. The sub can't remember which called BS on the DPS worker, and the pregnant lady found out that the DPS worker was lying so they could supposedly kidnap the newborn. That story was messed up. It's beyond terrifying how vulnerable and targeted pregnant women are to psychos of both sexes. There are a lot of I survived stories from pregnant women, and way too many news reports of those who did not. Horrifyingly, homicide is the leading cause of death for pregnant women. AskARapist programming was a really helpful guy who taught people programming and would helpfully answer questions. Stopped posting one day. Turns out the reason why he was arrested was for keeping his son locked in a room and making child porn of him for years. He was even Redditor of the day at a point link. Apparently he committed suicide in November of 2014. He was hanging from his cell. Even weirder, there were message threads supposedly from him a number of years before his suicide where he discussed how he sympathized with the Westboro Baptist Church and believed in some of their ideology. There was definitely some screws loose in that guy's brain. Just not the bits that can write code, I guess. Does nobody remember the thread where a father suspects his son has been sexually abusing the family dog? I remember the father had been posting updates about confronting the son, trying to help the dog, having to tell his wife, etc. And someone else linked a story about someone else's kid sexually abusing either a dog or cat too. That one so badly the animal had to be put down and the people divorced because the other spouse didn't believe their kid could do that. To that post. This will get lost, but one of the darkest moments for me was when our random acts off Amazon was infiltrated by scammers. I was really enjoying gifting people random things and bringing small joys into their lives. Then some people started putting out false proof of sending off gifts and posting fake stories about needing things or about their tragic lives in order to get people to send them stuff. It degraded to people being banned and private subreddits cropping up to try to curb the mistrust. It really broke my heart how many good people got suckered. It's so hard to find uplifting content online without some asshole determined to duck it up for everyone. There was a thread on, I think, AskARapist a few years back asking how rape cases were investigated and prosecuted, and it was immediately apparent that it was posted by someone who was trying to figure out how to get away with rape. That didn't end well. Wasn't there also an AskARapist thread on this sub that was basically people just admitting to rape? Yeah, it was at the same time that Obama was doing his Ask Me Anything. Was really weird seeing those two posts next to each other. I don't recall the sub now, but there was a guy who was telling about the time he suffered a traumatic head injury. He was a pretty average Joe for Reddit. Young, didn't really have a lot going on. While he was unconscious though, he saw himself graduate college, get a great job, meet the woman of his dreams, and start a family. Traveled, etc. He basically lived his entire dream life and grew old with her all in the few minutes he was knocked out. When he came to, it was gone, and he fell into depression and despair because he wanted it back so badly. That one always sticks with me for some reason. Yes, I remember this one. He realized something wasn't right when the lamp in the corner of the room was distorting or something. That story fascinated me. The dude who stole money by pretending he'll buy an island only for editors laughing my butt off. I thought the US already owns the Virgin Islands though. AskARapist Edwards. Anyone remember that what's the one secret that would ruin your life? Thread on askreddit. There were some wild ducking stories in there. Edit link. Edit some of the more memorable stories in there that are apparently pretty low down due to the algorithm changing. Is the girl who committed suicide after getting ducked by a dog, the guy who murdered his daughter's rapist and got away with it, and the first appearance of the comebacks. Edit Uigatai Alphascake made an update after this because she's the real MVP. Ironically, the only one I remember was the girl who was famous for baking cakes and just used Betty Crocker mixes. You should check that thread. She's been putting updates every couple of years. And there's one from January 21st. Kind of interesting to vicariously follow her cake life. Link. That thread about the guy whose son raped his wife who then divorced him because he looked too much like his own son. The I think teenage girl who catfished a sad, lonely middle-aged woman for years, pretending to be a man her age, and had elaborate fake backstories, and eventually convinced the woman to leave everything behind and fly across the country to move in with him, and ghosted all of her messages as soon as she landed asking where he was to pick her up. Grandma who killed her granddaughter because she didn't believe she was really allergic to coconut oil. Too long didn't read. Grandma has long insisted allergy isn't real. Is generally awful. In rereading, her initial general behavior isn't as awful, and I was mixing it up with a different terrible Reddit story. But I do think she used the coconut oil on purpose. Parents have warned her many times about allergy. Grandma is babysitting. Puts coconut oil on the little girl's hair before putting her to bed. She died of an allergic reaction. Link. This is one of the saddest stories I ever read on Reddit. And it drives me mad reading about anyone who doesn't believe in allergies. That is truly sad. An acquaintance of my mom lost her daughter to something similar. Back when we lived in Venezuela, mosquitoes were abundant, and she had a small daughter. She was like 1 year old. So by the night she used mosquito repellent lotion for her baby. It was baby approved, but basically she used so much that the baby got intoxicated and was dead by 6 AM. They saw her unresponsive. Took her to the emergency room, but she was too far intoxicated and couldn't be saved. Truly sad story. There was one thread about a dad who had the most terrible kid on earth. His wife ended up punching the shit out of the kid, and after they locked him away he escaped out of the window and never came back. Oh, I remember that one. The father said he was scared the moment his wife became pregnant for the second time, thinking that the second child might turn out like him too. It's here. Link. Editing to add this possibly even more appalling story link from another father. That's like a horror movie. The AskARapist thread is a pretty dark moment in Reddit history. It was nuked for obvious reasons. The most disgusting part about that thread was how supportive the commenters seemed to be. Reddit is a large site, so there is obviously going to be criminals of all types among the users. But the amount of upvotes they got, combined with the amount of excuses and justifications that came up, really showed what a staggering amount of truly horrible people are on this site. Exactly. The apologists and justifiers were the worst. I don't know many of my friends' handles, but I would really hope that none of them were posting things like that. It was one of the most frightening threads I've ever read. Life After Lyme. The dude who lived in a cult in Canada. I think Life After Lyme was a woman who thought she had Lyme disease and said she thought her daughter had it as well. Then Reddit pointed out that her symptoms weren't Lyme disease and the medication her doctor was giving her was not for Lyme disease. Might have them backwards, unless the story changed after some time. She basically documented her dive into insanity. Bro, that thread scared the shit out of me because my dumbass thought those were the actual symptoms of Lyme disease. That time that guy discovered his wife cheated on him. Reddit advice was to file for a divorce immediately. His wife's response was to murder their children. The saddest thing is that this was really the best advice, since the woman was ruining the health of the guy and the family. Unfortunately, she was incredibly unbalanced and no one could have predicted that she would do something like that. Yeah, I feel like Reddit isn't exactly to blame there. I doubt even he thought she was capable of something that heinous. Definitely not to blame. You can't exactly predict that the woman would be completely unhinged and homicidal. It was still good advice. Very unfortunate. Them firing the wife of the dude that launched the whole Secret Santa thing after she had managed to turn Ask Me Anything into an awesome sub was kinda shitty. There was a post on our No Kids or something like that which has a story with some super dark humor built in. Basically this woman said she had 7 kids and explained that the world was better with them in it. A few months later, her 2 oldest children killed her, her husband and the youngest 4 kids. There was one 13-year-old who got away. The woman who got jealous of her husband's dead wife and threw away every picture and video of her. deleted all media of her on his laptop, and donated her things. The kicker, she didn't tell anybody this for 2 years. The user who was posting on our Ask Shinsen Physics multiple times a day because he was having a paranoid mental breakdown over the concept of quantum immortality. He was saying really unhinged things, asking anyone to prove the concept incorrect, otherwise he would need to kill himself because of how much he dreaded the prospect of living forever. His posts abruptly stopped one day. I remember one about a guy being the only architect in Britain, I think, who could work on a certain project. His boss, unaware of this fact, ended up being a complete jerk to him, so the guy decides to walk off. Long story short, the boss completely ducked himself over, and it was such a hilarious story it was being updated as time went on, up until his wife logs onto his Reddit account one day to inform us all he had passed away from a car accident. Edit the story link. Not really all that dark, but a brutal ASF twist. This married guy posted a tifu about being caught fapping to VR of his wife's sister. Said wife was big on no masturbation, so she considered that cheating. Turns out, the wife knew about the Reddit account, hijacked it and posted the probably most vicious update I ever read. The time where Reddit went on a witch hunt for the Boston bombers, doxed some innocent kid who had gone missing, including posting harassing messages to his family on Facebook. Turns out the kid was not involved at all and disappeared at the same time because he committed suicide. But that's where we did it Reddit comes from. I'll never forget that day. So much misinformation being spewed. Seems to be an issue on this side still to this day. The IM from a guy who had just tried heroin for the first time. All the comments were people telling him that he had seriously ducked up and that he was going to end up a heroin addict. He was confident that he had enough self-control and that he would be fine. 2 weeks later he posted an update that he was deep in the throes of addiction and that his girlfriend was leaving him. A few more weeks later he posted more updates in which he revealed he had basically ruined his life due to addiction and was facing legal troubles and losing his job. I believe that his last update was several years later in which he said it took him several years to finally get clean. It was eerie reading people predict and foreshadow his downfall and how arrogant he was. It was a great lesson in how you can't duck with heroin. Not even once. I believe you can still find his account and post history. He later admitted that he was lying about the early stuff and he was already having issues with drugs. He did spiral, but the lie was that he was clean from the start. Does anyone remember the subreddit where people would post the last living picture of people who had passed away as a kink thing? I never see that mentioned and don't remember the name of the sub. Edit actually, I believe they posted the last picture of dead people, not last living. I'm pretty sure the people were past. It was mostly pictures of young, dead women. The one that comes to mind is the one where the guy posted in a relationship sub I think about how he gave his pregnant girlfriend something that essentially aborted the baby. He was fully aware of it too. I'm here to just discuss Rampart. Only Rampart. I forget the user, but he was posting about the Virginia Tech shooting, and he became one of the victims unfortunately. Edit words and stuff. God, I don't remember the username, and haven't seen anyone mention it here. The thread about the guy who thought someone was sneaking into his apartment and stalking him, so he set up cameras and was finding notes and stuff in his apartment. Come to find out there was a carbon monoxide leak in his building, and it was basically slowly killing him and driving him nuts. But one random redditor piped up and told him to test for carbon monoxide leaks. Edit thanks Yusuf Taka for finding what I was talking about. Here's the link for all you guys. Link.